180,000 people who are evacuating, and we don't have a lot of different directions that people can go. So fortunately, we didn't have the same kind of barreling fires that we did with the Tubbs fire, because we would have been in more trouble again. But getting out early, paying attention to the news. For us, the radio KSRO, which I'd never listened to in my entire life, because I don't even know what kind of music Ordinary plays, but it did 24/7 news on what was going on with the fire. Everybody listened to KSRO. I don't know what radio station you have here you listen to. There should be one that gets fed all the information that the sheriff does, or whoever is the equivalent of the top dog information officer is giving the information to, and you all should know where that is on your radio dial. So double up on cars, meaning don't take 2 cars, means 2 of you get into 1 car, because that'll mean less traffic. And then I don't know what your language is here, so people can help me. In California, we have voluntary evacuation, and then we go to mandatory. In other places, it's precautionary and immediate threat to it. Does anybody know what you call it here?
Voluntary mandatory.
Okay, good. That worked for us.
Well, there we go.
So it's really important for people to understand the definition, so they understand that when you've got mandatory evacuation, you get the hell out of there. You don't play around, you don't say, I don't really smell smoke. Just get out of there. So that's really important. You want to make sure that you understand from your emergency services how they're going to alert you in your communities. Do you have different sounds that go off from some kind of microphone system for fires here? I don't know the answer to this. You need to know the answer to this, and perhaps the next gentleman will say that. This time, which they didn't do before, all the sheriffs and the police went through the neighborhoods with mandatory evacuation, and their siren sounded like a European siren. So it was very different sound than emergency vehicles ordinarily sound. You know that. I'm not going to do it. Wah, 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 like that. Do you understand? You get it. It was a different sound. So they were coming through with that. I mentioned, you said you've got a code red here. Radio station's important. I told you about phone issues. One of the things that we discovered in the Tubbs fire, I still have a Baltimore phone number, because that's where I lived for many years, and I didn't change my phone number. I didn't get any alerts because my phone number said area code 410, not 707. So figuring that, making sure that if you're using any phone numbers here, that because everybody pretty much uses cell phones these days rather than landlines, that you sort out that problem and know that when you're using automatic calls that it is going to go to the people who are here, despite what phones they're using. And I told you, listen to the sheriff. So then people have to go somewhere. If their homes are in danger and they're told to evacuate, you have to go somewhere. In all the fires that I've known in Northern California, a lot of self-organizing happens. Churches open up, high schools open up. The Red Cross then, as quick as they can, get there and they open up formal emergency shelters. These fine gentlemen on the bottom left, that's daytime, that's the sun. You can see how much smoke there is in the air there. They've just sort of set up their campsite. A lot of people went to the ocean during our fires and literally set up on the beach. There were a lot of horses on the beach too. So people just went to the beaches. The shelters are really important for people to have an immediate place to go to. They will want to go back and see if their home is okay. So they probably won't go off island until they figure out what condition their home is in. Lots of different vulnerabilities in shelters. People are not uniformly well. Some people may have the sniffles. Some people are very elderly and frail. We may want to create separate rooms, separate areas for those people who have various issues. There may be unaccustomed minors. An unaccustomed minor has to be 24/7, has to have a sheriff or law officer with them at all times in a shelter. So making sure there are arrangements to have enough folks for that. People have huge hearts, and they hear that so many people and babies and children have been evacuated, so they want to donate baby clothes. We had, I would say, 6 semi-truckloads full of clothing. Oh my God. I was part of the team that was trying to figure out trying to sort these for 2 days, and then we said, just can't do it. So if this happens in another community or some part of this community and you want to donate anything, donate money. That can be deployed in the most effective way. Donating stuff, unless it's specifically requested. So Annalee High School put out a request through KSRO, our radio station. We need bedding. We've set up beds, we need bedding. I went to my attic and I had just a bunch of old sleeping bags. We took them there, we dropped them off. They were able to use them. The other thing they needed was animal cages. We had some animal cages, we took them. So if there are specific needs, the shelter should know that they can ask for them. We should respond to that. But don't bring, the stuff people donated, puzzles and Scrabble. And they're thinking the kids are going to get bored, but really missing pieces to Scrabble, that's no good. I mean, just so be careful about that. Air quality sucked for a long period of time. If you had chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, asthma, any other kind of lung problem, you really needed to stay inside, because the minute you went outside, your whole mouth felt like metal. It just felt awful. So the recommendations that were made, that, by the way, is San Francisco. That's 50 miles away from the Tubbs fire. And that's what the air quality looked like there. My university, the University of San Francisco, and all the schools in San Francisco were closed, 50 miles away from the fire. So it was recommended that you wear N95 respirators, which I have a photo there. But since then, I've participated in a bunch of webinars. We have no real science about how protective that is. It feels like it's protective. It's probably protective. We don't have any really good science about it, and they are one size that fits all. And so if you've got a little hair on your cheeks, I'm talking about the men here primarily, and, or if you've got a funny nose, or if you've got a wide chin, I mean, this is one size fits all. The other thing that we discovered is they do not make children's size N95s. They don't make small ones. So if you've got a small face or a small child, it's not going to work for them. These are some of the things that we have improved since our 2017 fires. Good or bad, Pacific Gas and Electric, PG&E, is now doing rolling blackouts. This last night, the winds in our area were predicted to be 50 to 60 miles an hour. I got, on my Nextel phone here, I got a warning that the blackout was going to start at 7 o'clock this morning. So, and they don't tell you when it's going to turn back on. During our last blackout, we lost everything in our refrigerator and freezer. I also own a winery, and we lost 3,000 gallons of wine because it needed to be cooled during that part of fermentation, so this is like really depressing to lose wine. I'm kidding, there are many worse things to lose than some wine. So the blackouts are happening. Also, this last time, we did evacuations early. Some people were not happy about that. It saved potentially would have saved lives. Getting everybody on the road. If you're evacuating 180,000 people, give them plenty of time to get out of there. So that was really important. And then the other thing is more targeted aerial drop. So what was interesting, one of my friends who went with our mutual friend back to her house, this was from the Kincaid fire. She was mandatory evacuated. She went back to the area. All around her house, she lived in a rural area, all around was burnt. Her house was saved. They had intentionally been dumping this paint retardant on the houses in the rural areas. Previously, they were putting it at the, I don't know what it's called, the base of the fire, or the front of the fire, or they were setting a line that it shouldn't go any further than this. But this last time, they were dropping flame retardant on the houses in the rural area. It saved houses. And so that's a different, that's just a different approach that they started doing. The aftermath is incredibly important and goes on and on. So returning to the fire scene, many people returned because they just couldn't imagine not going back there. It was a week later that the CDC and others said, you shouldn't have gone back there. It's got all kinds of toxic, dust and VOCs and all kinds of things, but many people had already gone back there. So after the fires, both the Sonoma fires, the Paradise fires, the Kincaid fire, there is a need for hazardous materials cleanup. Think about the things that are under your sink, in your garage, out in your shed, that now caught on fire. There's now residual dust, all kinds of stuff that can be potentially highly toxic. FEMA pays for, the Federal Emergency Management Agency pays for the hazmat cleanup. Still a minor mystery as to where all that cleanup stuff goes to, but some of it to hazardous materials waste sites, some of it we're not absolutely sure. People were recovering what was possible. Then folks have to figure out if their home site looks like this, oh my God, where am I going? What am I going to do? And helping people make those decisions. We took in people, everybody that I knew in West County took in people. We took in families and dogs, and we had an RV, and we had people living in our RV for a while, and other people who had RVs had families living in them for long periods of time. Dealing with insurance was a nightmare for many people. Renters, unless most renters are renters because they can't afford to own a home, they're often on a budget. Unless they had renter's insurance, renters got nothing. So FEMA came along, insurance companies came along and wrote people's check. It wrote people's checks. If you are a renter, you do not get anything. You just gotta see you later. So there are real issues around the economic injustice of what happens in the aftermath of fires. And that owner versus renters. And people are going to be living a new reality, not just that day or the next day or the next month, but for years. Safe cleanup needs to be done by professionals, people who are trained. There's HAZWOPER training, hazardous waste operations. There's a whole curriculum. There are people the federal agency or the federal government contracts with to do this so that the workers are safe. And they are the folks that really need to be engaged in this part of the cleanup. We love everybody who is involved in fighting fires, and that's a very big group of folks. And all over California, you'll see billboards and signs on people's properties and, hats. We do love the fire service. So people then had to decide whether to rebuild or to get out of there. And people were about half and half. So we had an area called Fountain Grove. Very wealthy folks lived there, and the fire just tore through there. And if you drive, and this is 2017, if you drive through there now, you'll see some houses that are partially rebuilt and a lot of for sale signs. People just were afraid to live back there again because they are in danger of the same thing happening, actually. So I wanted to share this with you, and it's going to be too small, so it's just a summary. But this was written on Facebook by a woman who lost her home. And so, I think I have it after this. I will read it to you. But the other thing to note in the aftermath is children will usually be fine initially, but will often start experiencing problems 6 months to a year later. Depression, anxiety, acting out. Having fires happen again the next year and smoke the next year triggered all kinds of stuff, including in adults who thought that they had gotten on the other side of stuff. So numbers of ways in which people re-experience or never really put it all back together. And we have to care for these folks. Our mental health services have to care for them. The same is true for our firefighters. Our firefighters never saw fires like these fires. It's like a whole new animal. And it was really scary. So this is an all hands on deck. I'm just delighted that you are gathered to really, and I hope I haven't scared the bejesus out of you, but really just kind of gave you a bunch of practical things that you can think about doing and how you will begin to work together, because that's going to be the best thing. Resiliency happens when you work together. So this is what she learned. She said, looking back, we did some things right. I'm going to just paraphrase here. Get to know your neighbors. Sign up for your city's or county's emergency notifications. Scan those photos and other materials, digitize them, put them up to the cloud. If you have non-electronic videos or anything else, make sure you make copies of them, put those up to the cloud. Make a list of the things that you want to grab, not just your underwear and socks. Keep your important documents. If you have to evacuate, take it seriously. Anticipate what's coming next. They immediately made reservations in hotels for their family. The hotels all over San Francisco were full. All over the Bay Area were full. So where people are going to stay who go off island, this is something you all know and would figure out. Don't save all your best wine to drink for a special occasion someday off in the future. Just drink it with friends now. And so, once again, I'm going to give you, anybody who wants these can have the whole slides. But I want to thank you for having me. I hope that what little information I imparted today is in some ways helpful for you. Continue to love those darn firefighters. They are the best. And I think I'm ready to roll. So thank you.
Josh, you ready?
While they get our slides up, I'm Dave Salino. I'm the Chief Fire Warden for the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation. The Chief Fire Warden or the State Fire Supervisor, and we've got a few folks here from our State Forestry Bureau. We're going to just talk briefly about what we bring to the plate, sort of, and what we've learned. I've been in the job now since 2007. I've learned a lot about the Vineyard from the western part of the state. But first I wanted to thank Barbara. That was really powerful. So in the last few years I've had a chance to interact. I've got a lot of friends in the West, colleagues that we work with on a national level. And so I'm going to just say a few things about what we do in the big picture and then hand it over to Josh, because Josh is the District Fire Warden, really giving you the attention here on a daily, weekly, monthly business, and he'll talk in some detail about what we can do here locally. But I will say that I think California is a wake-up for us, right? But it's not just California. So how many folks remember the 2016 fire season? 2016 fire season came to the eastern United States, came to Gatlinburg, Tennessee in particular, and that made the news as well. And there were 14 fatalities. It was the same issues, right? Paralleled what happened in Paradise. And then Gatlinburg wasn't the only fire. There were fires up and down the Appalachian chain. As a matter of fact, there was one that went over 100 acres in New Hampshire. There was an 8,000 acre fire in the Poconos. And here in Massachusetts, as a state fire supervisor, I sat on pins and needles several days during that summer. We had a 120 acre fire over on the base, actually. And we had the days where we have these indices that almost align, right? And their relative humidities, winds, temperatures, and then the conditions of the fuels. And so we had a number of days where those alignments came within 3 to 4 hours of each other. The perfect storm is what Barbara was talking about in Paradise, or on the Tubbs fire, in really, really extreme conditions. And so, so this is our bureau, and I have this as a common slide that we use. It gives a little bit of historical context to fire in Massachusetts, starting down there on the right. That was a fire on Cape Cod in the 1920s, like 1927, that burned over 15 or 20,000 acres. Over here on the left, lower corner is in Manny. It was actually in the southern part of the island, not on the state forest. It was on a Nature Conservancy prescribed burn, and it was just after one of the hurricanes made a close approach off of Nantucket, but didn't quite give us the rain, but it gave us the salt spray, and it cured off all the fuels along the ground. And this was their test fire, and needless to say, they didn't proceed with the burn that day, but that was the potential fire behavior that could come out of that fuel type. And then up above is sort of, it's kind of a cycle, you know, so up above just represents, that's a mile standard state forest, and that's us. It represents what we're trying to do with the potential fire risk and manage our fuels and our ecosystems to sort of learn to live with fire. Go ahead, Karen. I don't have those. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Let's see here. I'm going, there we go. So what's really important about our story is that we have a mission. We've been in existence since 1911, and it's to provide aid and assistance in the prevention, detection, and suppression of forest fires to the cities and towns. And what's really important about Massachusetts, and my friends in the West oftentimes find this to be really interesting, is that, and it's not uncommon in New England, is that the local fire chief has jurisdiction over all fires, including state lands. That's huge. Right, and that's a huge responsibility on those local fire chiefs. As you know here, many of them are called volunteer fire chiefs. I was one in the western town of Coleraine, Massachusetts, near Vermont. That's a huge responsibility. And so our job is to work, and we take this very seriously. We have a really close relationship with the fire service in Massachusetts because of this, to support them and help them out, you know, in years, especially when we have a fire season that's active. Here's what your typical state fire agency does. Typically working under the state forester, we provide that occurrence reporting. It's our job to maintain the story of the fire occurrence reporting. We provide detection. We have 42 fire towers still in Massachusetts, and we still keep that network going. We provide a MEMA state response. We run a federal excess property program that supports all of those town fire departments. We send fire crews out west, so we've had a number of crews that have been in California and across every single western state and across the south as well since 1985. We bring that experience back here to our own state to apply and share with the towns and the communities. And we provide that wildfire training across the state as well. Last year we trained over 1,200 firefighters across the state of Massachusetts. And we do the fire danger rating on a daily basis. What I want to do is set Josh up, and I want to talk about how do we fit into this national thing. And the wildland fire problem is a national problem. So it's not just Northern California, and Northern California is taking the brunt of it right on the ground, but it's a national issue. And so when Paradise burned, when the campfire burned, 6 months later, actually the following year, your auto insurance rates went up, and it was one of the direct results was of the campfire. Okay, and so but also we share resources, right? So all 50 states are in this together. We partner, and the reason is it could happen anywhere else, as exemplified in 2016, anywhere else in the country. All right. So in 2009. Congress recognized there was an issue. There was the Flame Act that was introduced in Congress, and that led to a national document called the Cohesive Wildland Fire Management Strategy. So Congress said, we'll fix the fire spending bill. That's one of the problems that the Forest Service has always had, and it affects every state. As soon as we have years like 2016, 17, 18, they start to run out of money to fight those fires. And so they come and that money starts to come out of other supporting programs to state and private forestry agencies. And so they needed to fix this. And Congress said, fine, we'll work on fixing this, but what we need to do is we need to have a cohesive strategy across the country that brings all fire agencies together to work off the same page. And that started in 2009. And in 2014, it was completed. It was written. The document was written. It basically become a framework that we work from. And it's based on 3 strategic goals. One is restoring and maintaining fire-resilient landscapes. Number 2 is creating fire-adapted communities. And that doesn't mean actually ecosystem communities. That means communities like the Vineyard who live in a fire-dependent ecosystem where fire has always played a role naturally. And so how do we live and adapt to living in an environment where fire is part of the role in the tool in nature, right? And then number 3 is safe and effective and efficient wildfire response across the country. And those are the simple 3 national strategy goals in this framework, and that's what it is. And so, actually, just backing up, so in the end, there's 3 regions, there's 3 strategy groups, one in the Northeast, one in the South, and one in the West. And we've been heavily involved in it. I'm the chair for the Northeast, and we brought all of these players together literally 3 weeks ago in Plymouth for the national workshop. And we had folks here on the Vineyard. I took some Type 1 incident commanders over here to the Vineyard, and we gave a tour, and they were impressed. They were impressed with the work. They were impressed that we are recognizing the issue, and they were concerned for us as well because they've lived through this on the ground in the West. And so what's interesting about our story is we, of course, focus on the state forest. And so we've got, our team is here. Aaron Whitten's in the back. He's one of the burn bosses. Joel Carlson, next to him, is a burn boss, one of our only contractor, a fire management private contractor in the state. Josh is the district fire warden, and Karen Lothrop is the new full-time year-round firefighter we have on staff, centered here out of the Vineyard. So we started aggressively working with the forest back in 2010. It actually went even before that. There was a lot of research done out here, but aggressively started to try to build this boundary along the northern edge of the forest and where those subdivisions are. And so, so there's Dodger's Hole, for instance, over on the right, and Nat's Farm, or not Nat's Farm, what's that one, Josh, in the corner? Hop's Farm, up on the northeast side, and with very volatile fuels downwind from those subdivisions. And so over time, just real quick, over time, we've treated these fuels with both mechanical and prescribed fire. And the idea is we're sort of hitting on all 3 of those national strategic goals, if you think about it. And we're trying to restore resilient fire-adapted landscapes, right? We're working with these communities because fire is going to be here in some form or fashion, whether we like it or not. And then we work with our partners in the fire service here in the back to become part of that, to become part of the solution by becoming part of the team.